The driving mission at Go Sports is to bring you the best paintball content and broadcast in the world, behind the scenes, in the pits, and on the field. To continue this mission, we're rolling out a renovated website platform across the board with easier search functions and a more robust chat system for better interaction with your fellow fans. Dive farther into the game with a new integrated stats portal. Get your insight into the game anytime, anywhere, with an improved functionality across all mobile devices. Check it out now. Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall, and I got Matt Jackson here to discuss a pretty big move. We had TJ Danner talking about moving from AC Dallas to San Antonio X Factor on our last show, and sure enough, now we got an even bigger move here because, Matt, you won the Golden Barrel. You're an MVP caliber player, one of the best players in the world, getting picked up by Edmonton Impact. So we're going to be discussing that move, talk about his time on AC, talk about AC's performance at World Cup, some of the other top teams, and who he thinks that Impact's going to be contending with next year in 2021, because it was a crazy 2020. Who knows the hell's going to happen next year? And also discuss the Ultimate Shootout too. Speaking of which, we got the last semifinal match coming in the recent Ultimate Shootout. That should be coming up next Monday, and then the finals. Let's see who's going to be taking on Fred Berkeley, either Harrison Fry or Chad Boucher. So yeah, pretty big move here. I was hearing some rumors, but Matt, I've heard rumors about you every single year, and you always said no. And then this year you decided to say yes. So we got a little bit of stuff to talk about here. But yeah, I didn't know if you were ever going to actually say yes. And I feel like this is a perfect time to have this discussion, because not very often do we have, it's kind of tough to talk honestly about the situation that you're in. When you have a chance to make money playing paintball, and you've been on a team like AC Dallas that's been threatening for wins for a long time, and you're one of the core guys, you're like the core dude on the team as far as like the stars are concerned, because you've been that MVP caliber dude, the dude that won the Golden Barrel, the guy that's been leading the charge on the field, and then now you're going to Edmonton Impact. So there's a lot of stuff we could discuss here. Let's just kind of start with like where your head's at right now. How you feeling? You're obviously probably pretty stoked in a lot of ways, but maybe sad in other ways. But let's just dive right into it.
Yeah. So really, honestly, exactly what you just said. Like, really excited, but also at the same time, like, gonna miss a lot of things. The AC team, AC organization, really close knit. Most of the events we had 6 or 7 guys. The occasional 8th. So practices are basically, ran by us, completely controlled by us. If it's me, John, and TJ, whatever it is, we're going to miss all 3 of us are going to miss that, because already, it's not going to be that anymore. So that's something that's going to be, very, very different. Not being able to just talk to BJ, Ryan, and having like the new kids, like Logan, for example, this past year, and always being kind of that mentor role. Hopefully this is what I'm excited about, going to a team like Impact. I get to play with J-Rab. I get to play with Zach. I get to play with Justin Cornell. I get to play alongside with Mouse. Those 4 names alone, I feel like should excite most paintball players that have been in the league or seen the league play basically for the last, 5 to 10 years. So that's a big thing for me. And then of course, Dave Baines is a big name. And of course, Bart, being a professional athlete himself, in hockey, it's kind of a big deal to be a part of that, and I'm curious to see how he runs the organization. So very, very sad on one hand, and then really excited on the other, because it's so different. The only team that really hasn't been, I'd say, ran by a really small group, and I'd be a part of that group that I've ever played on, was the Tauntauns. Now it was only 1 year for 4 events. But other than that, it's always been VCK, our original team that me and John, or that John ultimately started and I was a part of, and then to the AC, the AC program for the last, I guess it's 6 years. So,
well, I do want to. We've had you on the show and we've talked about your history a little bit before, but I think this would be a good time to kind of talk about that again, just because it is a part of it. And because I feel, and I even said this to TJ, and I've said this about the AC camp quite a bit, is that I do feel that it should be a source of inspiration for teams out there that are coming up the ranks, not just the young pro teams that just got here and can see what a homegrown group of guys, what's possible there, but across the sport, to every single level. And because having seen you guys played on VCK when you first came up, I mean, you guys weren't that good. And I use that as an example often, is that you guys did work your asses off and train and were very harsh with each other for a long period of time. We've discussed that quite a bit as that kind of being almost essential and a fundamental, crucial element to the mix of good paintball teams, is that if you are not willing to go into the breach conversationally and constructive criticism wise with your team, you're probably never really going to be as good as you guys could be if you're always treating each other with kid gloves. It's just very tough, because that can get heated. It can be difficult. You're smiling because it's true though. Let's just start there. But I do, because I want your thoughts on that, because you're a hardcore dude in practice. I mean, I hear that constantly, is that, no one says like, yeah, dude, I hate Matt. Matt sucks. Like as a person, and I hate having him around as a dude on my team because he's so hardcore. That's not what they say, but they do say that,
there could be some that aren't a fan. There could be some that aren't a fan, and they may have their reasons, and that's fine. But no, absolutely, that's a big conversation that I'll be honest, like John and I, my brother, we've had a huge conversation this offseason, being kind of, in a sense, it's kind of scary having that persona that everyone knows or that everyone thinks, but at the same time, like, I jokingly talk about this to a number of different people in paintball. It's like any team that John or myself have really ever been a part of has improved, period. And, that's, you could take that as being like extremely cocky or anything like that. But unfortunately, I think it's a hard fact. And the reason I think that can be, brought up, or that conversation could be had, is because exactly what you're saying, is being extremely critical, and not necessarily being always the nice guy about, hey, you made these mistakes, we're gonna need you to not make these mistakes, and that's how we're gonna get better. Like, hey man, you just let 4 of our guys get shot in the back 4 times the same way. Let's not ever have that happen again, right? That's why we're practicing, so then it doesn't happen on Sunday at the tournament, right? You can only be nice so many times. And I think it's a big, a pivotal piece of the teams that are up and coming and trying to get better, because I think there's a point where some of the teams, they obviously get too aggressive, right? I think this past year at one of the regional events, right? Like that's a perfect example of, there's a point where you want to be, you call it the hard and soft, right? You want to be hard on someone, but you can't do certain things, right? Then someone's not going to want to play for you, and then they get motivated the completely opposite direction.
Well, let's have that conversation real quick, because I've been around a lot of hardcore coaches in my day, even not paintball, playing baseball and playing football. But I thank them. I'm happy that they were tough on me at the time, because I feel like that was needed. That being said, you can kind of scare people away. And there is a fine line. So maybe we could kind of talk a little bit about that. Yeah. Like, where do you think that is? Obviously, I think it is, and then I'll let you take it from here. I don't want to get too deep into it because I want your thoughts on it. But to me, it is kind of individual. You have to kind of know who you're speaking to and how to speak to that certain individual to push them a little bit. But you have to know individually as you're going down your team and kind of coach each one of those guys slightly different depending on what they are able to absorb or not able to absorb to get the best out of them.
Yeah, absolutely, no question. That's BJ Henningberg is probably one of my favorite people that I've ever played with ever. And honestly, it's because I could come down on him so hard, and he literally would look at me and be like, "You right," or he would look at you and be like, "No, you're completely wrong. You don't have any information. This is not what happened." He had his argument to counteract what I thought happened, right? And there's a point absolutely where you can't come down on a very, I don't know. I don't take this like as a negative connotation for you guys listening, but like you can't come down really hard on a soft person, because then as that person, they get belittled. They kind of crumble under the pressure. But at the same time, I feel like that's part of why competitive sports is I'm a huge proponent and a promoter of people playing competitive sports of any kind, because I think it puts people in that situation where they have to kind of evolve and kind of grow as a person and learn how to handle those tricky and tough situations. But yeah, there's no question, right? Like, I can't walk up to Ryan Hall and punch him in the face and think that he's going to play better the next point. It just doesn't work that way. Ryan Hall's not like a soft person by any means, but he's not going to handle, a physical altercation like BJ might, right? Like, BJ is a very physical and aggressive person, so he might be okay with me walking up to him and pushing him. But Ryan, it's just not how it is. And the way that I look at it too, and John and TJ, the same thing. I think it's kind of what we've learned over the years is, if you only use facts and you only try to argue, like turn the conversation to an argument with facts, then you can't really get mad, or you can't get emotional about the situation, because, well, that's a fact. That's a fact. Hey, this is actually an incorrect fact because this is wrong. Whatever it is. So there's always help too in having an extra set of eyes. I think that's one of the reasons that me, John, and TJ, it worked really well, is because TJ's eyes from the Dorito side, I'm eyes from the snake side. John's eyes is generally from kind of in the back as a more anchor type role. So we have three different perspectives, and then also if we're in a game, or if we remember the point that we're talking about, we can analyze it from those different perspectives and say, hey, this isn't actually accurate, so on and so forth. So then it changes the conversation, and it's not so much attacking the individual, but it's attacking the situation. You're not trying to say, hey, BJ, you play terrible. Hey, you played this situation terribly, or whatever it may be. And I think that's really the way to approach it. And if someone is coming down on you, say you're the individual that made the mistake, don't think of it as they're attacking you. Make sure that you process it as the sense of like, well, they're attacking what I just did. They're not attacking, Matt, Fuzz, or whoever you are. It's the situation that is being in conversation, not you as a person. And this is something, I'll say this too, over the years in paintball, there's not a lot of people that play in the pro league. So a lot of times when we play against each other, you have this like personality on the field and personality off the field. You can be a huge dick on the field, but then when you come off of it, it's completely different. And I think that's okay too, to learn the people that can do that and can handle it too. And I think that's a big part of having a really good team that can up and come and overcome all the obstacles, is figuring out all these things, dealing with the personalities and kind of figuring out how to handle it.
Yeah, but that's one of the hardest parts of it, is that it is really difficult to win a paintball tournament. I don't care what level it's at, and it's exceptionally difficult to win a professional paintball tournament. I think that would have to be my next question. I asked TJ this before. We've asked different people this from different teams. We've all been speaking about this just because AC Dallas got to be so good, and you guys were like, I just kept putting in the promos because it was so true. It was like, you guys are the best paintball team on planet Earth that hasn't won a pro paintball tournament. Even though, if you go back like all the way to when you guys started to get really good in 2017, before that, you guys still were pretty decent, taking some thirds, some fourths. When you came into pro right away, I mean, started to be pretty exceptional. But then starting in 2017 is when it started to get pretty consistent. There was a tough one in Texas, but it was a third, 12th, 9th, and then second, 7th, third, second, 5th, 4th, 5th, second, 6th, second, 4th, 7th, and then 10th. So 7th and 10th this year, which has got to be really frustrating and super weird year. So again, I don't feel like, if we didn't get this decompress out of you after the time you spent on AC Dallas, I don't feel like I'd be doing paintball history its justice, just because we haven't had anyone other than, again, TJ, but as intimate with that storyline and what happened there. And, as a lesson to the next team that comes up, or AC Dallas moving forward, like, what's it going to take, when you have a team that good, let's just start with there. Lessons learned for you 4 times in the finals with no victories. If you look back at that, and, obviously you personally became one of our best players in the league, but also I know you're a guy that's motivated out there because you want to be the best. And I think that's got to be, and we'll get to this a little bit here as to the reasons why you went to Impact, but I think that's got to be part of it. because I know how much it would burn you up to see you after the event when you had just lost, and it was so frustrating as somebody that's taken a lot of second places too. I know how just mentally so frustrating that you just drives you crazy in those situations. But let's kind of start there. Lessons learned: 4 times in the finals, no wins. If you could go back and change anything, or if you could tinker with something here or there to put a team out there that could have won, like what do you think it would have took for AC Dallas to get one of those wins?
I honestly, I'm the type of person that doesn't necessarily think it's some kind of magical or, I wouldn't necessarily say it's something that we could go out and practice. That's probably, it is more in a sense kind of a magical kind of thing that you kind of need some stuff to go right for you. And it just kind of happens. Like when we got second in Chicago to X Factor, you can ask Billy Bonaccia this because I talked to him after the event. He would get into 50 snake and he would shoot this bounce shot, and he did it the whole event. And he said he had 0 kills until finals. He killed me on it the very first time he shot it and the very first point we played. So like the instance of it, like he was still doing it even after not getting any kills, but it happened to kill me in the very first point, right? So like there's little things like that happen. But honestly, a lot of the lesson that you could say is it's honestly control your own mistakes. If you reduce the amount of mistakes that you do, you're going to have better success. I could look at almost every single match and break it down to the point of this is where we made a mistake. This was played incorrectly. We messed up here. We missed this. It's very black and white for the most part, right? There's a few instances where when we lost to the Russians in Dallas, we didn't think we could have beat them if we were playing 125% per person. Like they hit shots that literally all of us would walk in, be like, yo, I got shot on something crazy. And TJ be like, yo, me too. John, yo, me too. Brad be like, yo, yeah, Malloy was like cross-handed behind his back, shot me running into Snake. Like just there was instances where it's like we weren't going to beat those guys on that layout, on that event, on that day, no matter what we did.
Yeah.
But there's the instance too, like you said, the Impact match this year in Vegas, with us getting 7th. We were winning the match and made countless mistakes, like 5 or 6 different times we made a mistake and let them get back into the match. And to me, like, yeah, they played well enough to beat us, but at the same time, I'm going to look at it as, well, if we didn't do all of these mistakes, then they don't even have a chance to win, right? So I think the biggest lesson is just to control your emotions in a sense where you're going to not let yourself make the mistakes to play, but also at the same time, there is like a little bit of luck to it where you got to just play good and hopefully luck's on your side. You get a lucky bounce, you get a good bounce shot to break on somebody. I guarantee you, if you talk to any of the X Factor, Impact, Heat guys, they'll tell you, be like, yeah, man, this point I shot 4 dudes, I got bounced here. Or, ref didn't see me get shot in my ankle off break. I slid into Snake and shot 4 dudes and then called myself out, right? Like, little crazy instances where it's like, kind of played the gray area and it worked out and we won. Like, there's a lot of instances. And of course there's instances too where a team just puts the hurting on someone and they just win. And then that to me is, those are better wins than anything because you know that you're just crushing, right? Like it's for us when we lost to the Russians and got crushed, that second was the easiest second ever. Yeah. Because we just like, totally. They just beat us so bad. But like when we lose against X Factor by 1 point, it's rough.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's much easier to get your ass kicked in paintball than it is to lose by 1 or 1 kill. Like it's a super close game and then one little thing goes wrong and you lost by an inch or fraction of an inch here. Yeah, that's torturous. Getting your ass kicked, it's like, well, there's 50 things that went wrong in that game. Like they beat us by a mercy rule. We were terrible. That was a terrible game for us.
Where do you want to start the conversation? Like let's figure that out. Where do we even start to try to fix it? Because
you're kind of just laughing about it. You're like, oh, yeah. Absolutely. But it's those close losses that haunt you forever, and those are the ones that are so frustrating. But again, I do think that you guys had an admirable run on AC Dallas with the team that you had. And obviously for the AC Dallas faithful, it's got to be really frustrating for me to be saying that way, because now you're going to one of the enemies in Edmonton Impact. After after having had all these conversations with all these dudes over the years, I mean, nothing lasts forever, man. Like, unless you own the team or you're the company that, like, unless you're like Dave Youngblood and the Iron Man, and like that ship will sail with him or it won't sail with him, and that's it.
Right.
At least unless somebody buys it off of them. It's like same with Paulie and AC Dallas, but as far as players, but that's pro sports, man. Like the people that get super pissed at that are hardcore paintball fans. I'm like, dude, are you not a fan of any other sports? Like, I mean, I love me some Phillip Rivers, but he plays for the Colts now, and like that's a little weird. Right. Even though I hate the Chargers because they betrayed us and went to LA, which is like diametrically opposed to us here in San Diego, even though we're all Southern California.
Right.
So it gets a little strange. But that being said, but that's sports though, and so nothing lasts forever. You cannot, I will argue this with anyone that would like to argue with me about this, but I really truly feel if you look at the run you guys had, or the run currently that all of the guys that are kind of in that mix, like even like the event that Cam McCarty had at that last event, and just the VCK guys, the career that Nico Hyde's had. I think it's a cool thing. I am interested to see where AC. So maybe before we even get into the reasons why you left, and then we got to talk about Edmonton Impact, and we got a decent amount of stuff still to talk about. What do you think AC does now, though? I mean, obviously they're going to have tryouts. I thought Ryan Hall played his ass off at World Cup. I think BJ is a stud. I mean, BJ is a force of nature out there.
Yeah.
And obviously your brother John's outstanding. So is he going to stay? Let me ask you that question. I mean, do you know? I mean, I don't. Maybe stuff. I would say not everything's for public consumption, but as it stands now,
do
you think that the rest of the guys are going to stay, or do you think that we're going to see more exodus?
I think, unfortunately, without saying anything specific, I don't think you'll see the core still there. I think it'll be ultimately a whole new team. I've heard some stuff, but same thing, right? Like, nothing for sure, so I won't say anything. But I've heard some stuff as far as Paulie's keeping the team around, going to kind of restructure, redirection in a sense, and kind of go through there. And of course, Diesel's always going to be around because of Mark and because of that organization. And the Ryan Hall, John, and BJ situation, I know they and everyone, as far as I understand, is still wanting to play and still trying to make moves and make everything happen. But unfortunately, I don't know 100% what's happening with everyone. And of course, TJ and I, kind of the easiest two transitions, I think. Impact and X Factor talked to TJ basically for the last 2 or 3 years. I've talked to Dave basically for the last 2 years. So there's we already had, I jokingly say this, we already had exit plans, worst case scenario kind of deal, but not necessarily, that wasn't necessarily public knowledge to where, Ryan, John, and BJ are already, all right, if something happens, Fuzz is going here and TJ's going here. Nothing set up like that. But I expect Ryan to play and start on any team, honestly. I think Ryan Hall as a player, being young, he's going to be very good and very eager to make his name even more known on a different team and not just be kind of undershadowed by me, TJ, and John, because John's been in the league for so long, kind of deal. I think BJ, if I've heard some different things about him playing. I feel like he can go and start on a lot of different teams as well. And I feel like John, if he's not actively playing, I think it's going to be a loss to the league if he doesn't play or coach in some shape, form, or fashion with the team. I think that's a brain that's going to be missed and not utilized for any organization if they don't take him up on that or approach him on whatever it is. But I think we'll all be somewhere. Just don't know where exactly yet.
Yeah, well, again, nothing lasts forever, and
yeah,
I mean, even a team like Impact has gone through other than the core guys that they've kept around, which I think is a testament to how good Zach Yakimek is, Zane, JC, and then the group of guys that have surrounded them for a long period of time. Some of the guys that have been on that team for a long time now. But they've stayed not just relevant, but elite of the elite, the best team, depending on the year, for a long period of time. I kind of want to I do want to get to Impact in a second, but I do want to kind of close off this conversation of just because the Texas paintball has gotten so good. And it's interesting to me that we are seeing this kind of the deconstruction of a team that was constructed and was as competitive as it was at the top end. Also, in from what we watched at the World Cup, where Diesel did beat you guys and then went on to go undefeated with 3 Mercy Rule wins. And now it does look, so that was the question. It's like, oh, well, this one's for respect, this one's for pride. But now it looks like AC Dallas is going to be completely rebuilt. And so I'm wondering if there's going to be any cannibalization there from Diesel to Dallas, because I think that, Diesel is getting so good right now with their squad. I mean, they looked outstanding. I mean, yeah, they went into Sunday and, they ended up losing to Damage, which was a team of the moment, with the loss for Tim, and Damage looked out so good. But that was a close match. That was a 1-point match. It was a 3-2 win for Damage and a loss for Diesel. Do you think there's going to be any cannibalization there, or do you think that they're going to kind of be their own entity with their own dudes?
Yeah, always being around, of course, the whole AC organization. The better way to think about it is, AC as a whole is the organization. And you had 2 separate teams. You had Diesel and then you had Dallas. Mark Johnson and Diesel, I don't see them going anywhere. They represent the Diesel name, and that's what they've built. I don't think they should try to take the Dallas name, right? Like the Dallas name is Greg Pauly and was us. You know what I mean? While as Diesel is Mark Johnson and Mark Baginski and those guys. And I don't see any of them doing anything differently as far as their team. I think they're going to be around. I've heard some things. Unfortunate, maybe Cam might not be playing. So that'll be a hit, I think. But at the same time, I think they're still going to do fine. I think they're going to play well, and they'll figure it out. And I think they'll be all right. And they absolutely played great at Cup. Beating us, of course, is a big deal for them because we've always been the big brother in a sense. So beating us at the event is huge for them. But it'll be interesting now. And this isn't like any type of negative. This is just me being curious. We practice against them a lot of practice, of course. Leading up to the events and sometimes in between. And so them potentially not having another top tier team to play against consistently. I'm curious to see if or how it affects the outcome and kind of see what they do, just because, right? Like, and it's the same for us. Like me and TJ and John, of course, we practice all the time in Dallas. So now we have to travel a little bit more. We'll probably have, I'd say, a few less practices. So I'm curious to see what that does to my game as well.
So let's jump into that, because I can't keep you here all night, but I do appreciate you being honest about what you really feel was needed or where we're at kind of in this situation. But what kind of precipitated this? I mean, what was after, from somebody that was the guy who was like, no one else is ever going to win these teams, Heat and Impact. And okay, we're going to have a couple teams here or there, but these dudes are just going to buy up all the dope players and no one's ever going to be able to compete. Like, bring me to now though, and I have my own thoughts on this. You and I have talked about this off camera. I've spoken about this on camera too. And I will say exactly what I think about this situation, because, I have pretty strong opinions about this, because again, we want this to be a pro sport. So I feel like we have to try to look at it with our elite guys in that way. But from your own mindset and your own situation, when did this kind of solidify for you that this was a move that was going to make? And I just think about this the other day, because the last thing I'll throw it to you before I let you take it away. But do you think 2020 had something to do with it? That instead of just being so focused on the grind with the guys, those 5 events, and you're at all the practices and you're so linked up with that train is going in a very specific way. Do you think that because of the way that this year went down and that you had a kind of a way to kind of step back from it and look at it a little bit from an outside perspective of that space of not being constantly in that grind, is then maybe you're like, okay, maybe it is time. Do you think that had something to do with it?
I think it'd be naive of me to say no. So absolutely, I think that it's a small piece of the puzzle, and honestly, like it's a few different things to like a few different points, I guess you could say, to think about on the whole thing. Obviously, it's very tough to bang your head against the system of you're playing against the same pro guys that have been playing pro and winning for the last 10 or 15 years now. Other than so actually Ironman is still technically, one of the teams that have won before, but
2008 for Impact is when they went pro. There was Open X Ball before that, but like,
right.
But pro.
Okay, so let's say 12 years, right? Right. Let's say 12 years. 12 years of the Impact guys, the Heat guys, the Dynasty guys. The X Factor has been around since I started playing like national events. We're playing against the same pro guys that have been winning and been playing pro for 10 plus years. So for us to come in and try to beat that, obviously that's a challenge that we wanted, and that's the reason that we did it for so long. But eventually, it gets to the point where the frustration starts kind of piling up. You start getting more and more frustrated easily because we've been here before. We have to overcome the same hurdle. So that's kind of like the first thing I would say is the reason it was time. Kind of say like the second part, and it's unfortunate because it's not on him as an individual. It kind of changed my perspective. But like, so TJ getting hurt, right? TJ getting hurt. The first event, I think it was Chicago, that we did really well without TJ. Obviously, that's like, a huge boost to us because we're like, all right, cool. Like we can still do this without this integral piece of the puzzle. And then, of course, the events after that, we still do pretty good. But understanding and, having this perspective of we're one piece away kind of from crumbling. It's terrifying, right? And as me as a player, I want to go into a weekend. I want to go into an event to where I have every opportunity and every piece and every tool that I need to try to win that tournament, at any given weekend. So the potential of one thing happening to where someone can't be there, that's not necessarily, in a sense, you call it job security, I guess you could call it. That's kind of a way to look at it. But also just the idea too, like I'm getting older, right? Like TJ's knee not healing as fast as we thought it would. That's terrifying. Like I've had some ankle injuries over the years. And, luckily I've been able to still play on them and not been in too terrible of a state. But I've been lucky to not have something happen, shoulder wise or ankle or knee. That's serious. So that's something that always is kind of a hidden factor in the back of your head every year. Like, if something happens, am I still going to be able to play? How many years is Dave going to keep asking? Like, yo, Fuzz, what are you doing, man? Eventually you say no long enough, you stop getting invited to the party, right? So that's part of it
so
too.
True.
But
yeah, that is true. That's really true. Yeah. Well,
it's a lot of things. Go ahead.
No, well, I was just gonna say I do agree with you that it's kind of like we talked about the other night. Yeah, man. Eventually you're gonna stop asking. Eventually, you're not gonna be able to do it. This is finite. Everything ends, and that is inevitable. And so you got to make the most of your time. Now, what do you want to do with your time? And I think that's why I always ask these questions to the guys that are. Now, you have a kind of a very interesting road though, just because you were that main dude. A lot of times, guys that get picked, they're not always that main guy, and so it's going to be a little bit of a different road for you with almost even more pressure in a way because more is going to be expected of you. Whereas if you're an Alex Rosati going on to Edmonton Impact, like they're not going to expect that you're going to be at Justin Rabikov's caliber of a 2 right out the gate because that's not what we saw to him. They're picking him up to hope that he can get there one day. But you're definitely going with Golden Barrel Award winner, man. You're MVP caliber guy. You won the first Ultimate Shootout. Like you're one of the best players we got. So there's going to be some pressure and some stress there. And you're definitely going to catch some flack from the AC Dallas diehard dudes that are like, you sell out. I can't believe you do this to us. That's inevitable too. It just is what it is. But how are you kind of looking at it that way? I mean, again, I feel that now I'm just going to say my piece and I'll give it to you to run with it. So I want to ask you a couple more questions before I let you go. But I definitely want you to say, whatever you feel like you need to say on this issue. But the way I look at it is that we only have a few people that are willing to pay paintball players. I've said it before. I'll say it again. If you want to be a pro paintball player, then you are either a hired gun for a rich guy or you're a poster boy for a company. That's it. Those are the two routes. I thank you guys so much for everyone's support out there. If I would love to get this one day where we could have a third road. That's why we're, giving people like you're going to have a chance to win $8,000 at the finale of the Ultimate Shootout. So we'd like to create that third road. But as it stands right now, we need more support to do that. But there are two roads. Sure. So you're going to be, the hired gun for the rich dude, or you're going to be the poster boy for the company. So if you want to either get like a gun deal from a company, or you want to get, or a gun deal and some cash or whatever it is from the only couple paintball patrons we have willing to pay dudes to play, well, do we want to have real pro paintball players or not? So you can only talk so much shit on the dudes willing to pay guys to play this game at a high level if one day you would want to get there, or if you respect the fact that, we're trying to make this thing, slowly. Like Rome wasn't built in a day, but guaranteed they were putting bricks in the wall every single day. So, I just think that this is part of that, this is part of it. And there's not a lot of guys that get offers like this. So you got to take it. If you need the money, I would say that, or if you've reached a certain end of the road where it's like, okay, well, whatever it may be, but I can't really get too mad at guys for being in the position that you're in and taking that deal, because it's like, dude, you don't get a lot of always opportunities. Like you said, Dave's going to stop calling you one day. So like, Matt's never going to come, or he's not good enough anymore, or he blew his knee out. So I just wanted to say that, because I know people are going to talk shit on the internet, but that's how I look at it.
I think, and I totally agree. Like, there's a point where I watch a lot of NFL, and I kind of joke, right? Like, when a new NFL team is created, why is it created? It's created to make more money, and it's coming and starting with a dude that has a lot of money and he's willing to make the investment, right? Bart, Randy, and these guys that are putting money into NXL, they're not getting a return on their money. Like, everyone knows this that's in paintball, right? But the hope is that one day maybe they do, right? But they also enjoy it too, right? So there's the money aspect of it, and then there's kind of the side benefit to it, right? I think, I haven't had a whole lot of time to talk to Bart one-on-one. I've been around Randy probably more just because he used to practice in Houston. But one of the reasons that they do it, and I'm going to assume on Bart's behalf because I haven't been around him, but is that they enjoy it, right? Obviously, like, Bart has his kids that play. Sarge has Ryan Smith that plays, right? There's a benefit for them to being able to promote all these things. So they're putting their money into it in the hopes, maybe one day they get a return on investment. But also at the same time, this is like my jokingly way of saying it. They're buying like kind of like a piece of happiness, a piece of joy by doing all of this, right? And we all get to kind of be around it and ride along this happy train, or whatever you want to call it, right? So the idea that people are angry or mad that, no one wants, I say this, like, there's a lot of people, and not no one, there's a lot of people that don't like watching Heat win or Impact win because of the money, right? But unfortunately, that's the same thing with the Patriots. The Patriots, have 6 Super Bowls? Brady has 6, whatever rings it is. Like,
or the Dodgers.
Yeah, the Yankees, like, everyone hates those teams because they are the winningest team. But without those teams, how many Yankees jerseys and Yankees hats do you see that if those people don't even have a clue about baseball, they're like, oh, the pattern's cool, right? Like, that is literally perpetuating and helping baseball like function and things like that. So unfortunately, it is part of any professional sport. But at the flip side too, like, if someone's getting angry or mad that someone's paying people to ultimately do this hobby that they've been doing for, I've been playing for 22 years, and I'm finally going to actually reap some little bit of a benefit from doing it. At no point am I going to make my money back, right? 22 years of playing paintball, buying paint, entry fees, traveling, like, it's just not the way that it is. But it's a super cool thing to be able to say that, I have this hobby that is giving me a return. And for someone to be mad at an individual achieving that in their life, that's kind of a silly thing, I would say. But at the same time, like you said too, right? Like, AC Dallas fans are AC Dallas fans. And I love everyone that was an AC Dallas fan. Absolutely. The whole organization, the whole team, everybody that was ever involved in it. Absolutely amazing. I still have people comment on the thing today that are diehard AC fans, like, yo, I'll tune in, I'll watch it. Big congrats, right? Like, everyone understands like the struggle of getting there. And now it's kind of like this gratification, it's like the cherry on top of like, yo, all of these things that we've been fighting for, getting on one of these teams, get to make the name for yourself, not just the organization, kind of helps and boosts everything. So I think it's kind of silly, and I don't know what else to call it other than silly on the people that are angry or mad about it. But unfortunately, it is what it is, and the team hopefully will do well this year. I think we have a good roster. So
Hey, people love to get outraged. I don't know if anyone listens to NPR's Hidden Brain. I think it's Hidden Brain. I'm almost positive, but they just came out with an awesome podcast about how outrage works in people's minds, and people love to get pissed off at things. It pumps them up, makes them feel good sometimes. So, and there's people are diehard fans. Like it's kind of sad. There's a part of me, like as I know how this goes, and as happy as I am for you that you have this opportunity, and as much as I do enjoy watching the elite, all-stars that play for Edmonton Impact. And every time I look at the roster, I'm like, who's Impact playing? I hope it's against one of the other, awesome teams, because this could be a really fun selfishly for me as a paintball fan. But it is a little sad. Another part of me too, this is a nuanced way of looking at it, but that's just how I look at it. It's like part of me is sad that I'm not going to be able to see is realistically, it's gonna be tough for Paulie to put a team together that's going to be as good right away. It's probably not going to be happen unless but who knows? Because we saw what Todd did with the Ironman at the first event of this year, which I think this is kind of where I want to take the conversation next, is that it's getting so interesting. And I will argue till I'm blue in the face with anyone that would like to argue with me about this, but I feel that we are in the most competitive era of pro paintball ever. Just because it's like, I don't know if you saw any of these when you were, back when you were younger, but, the Paint Magazine Famous book is going to be coming out. It's actually going to be 2 books. It's Famous and it's the Lost Rolls, which because of everyone supported it. And with COVID anyway, after a long delay, it is going to be coming out. So I've been looking at like at all of the rough drafts of the 2 books. And I wrote the intro for Lost Rolls, and I'm actually working on a thing about storytellers right now. But after kind of looking at that retrospective and having been there for a long time, I've been around the sport since 1993, and it's never been as competitive as it is right now. So that's kind of what I want to ask you now, is that, as sad as it to me, also part of me is going to be that we don't have an AC Dallas that's going to be hyper competitive. So now, that team's going to have to reform. But I believe in Paulie's ability to work with talent, and he's already proven that multiple times. So I'm just wondering what's going to happen to see. Also, then now Diesel get as good as they were. I mean, that's going to fill a void there. And they're going to be another potential hyper-competitive team in 2021 with, if they, the look that they gave us at World Cup was pretty outstanding. I mean, they had 3 Mercy Rule wins in the prelims, and they only lost again to Damage by 1 point. Damage went on to lose by 1 to X Factor, who then lost by 1 to Dynasty. It was a nasty Sunday. So I just want to kind of, we got, maybe about 20 minutes left, but kind of wanted to get your thoughts on some of these teams and where things are going right now. First of all, what do you think about the league in general and how competitive it is? Because, I mean, you've been doing this for, like you said, you've been playing for over 20 years now, but you've been a top level pro now for a little bit. So, I mean, I feel like you could probably weigh in on where we are at from a competitive standpoint.
No, for sure, and it's I joke, anyone that knows me, I'm kind of like my normal daily life. I have this saying where it's like a sad truth, but I think unfortunately there's this sad truth that like the top 8 teams are going to be the top 8 teams. The other 12, unfortunately, they have to show up and play extremely good to try to be a part of that top 8. I agree with you on the top 8 teams. It's more competitive than it's ever been. The unfortunate truth is that the bottom 10, there is a huge discrepancy. And I think it's kind of just the way that paintball is, because there's so much of an experience thing to it. It's not like where sometimes in NFL you're going to see, like, who the Steelers lose to 2 weeks ago. Like the Steelers were 10-0, and they lost to some team that they shouldn't have lost to. Most of the time in paintball, that doesn't happen very regularly. The most recent one, obviously, I think that you could basically use against me right now is like us losing to Diesel. That they technically and statistically haven't been, a super good team, but they beat us, who is a top 6 team. And I think if you ask them and they were honest about it, they would tell you we played extremely good at Cup, and that's one of the reasons that allowed us to beat AC. So the top 8, no question, I think is extremely good, extremely competitive. But unfortunately, kind of the mid-tier and bottom-tier teams, they do have some work and kind of experience to gain over the hopefully next couple years.
I feel like I do agree with you to a certain extent, but I would extend that number down a bit, and I would like to make a case to back that up.
Yeah.
I definitely agree that that at the lower, you have those lower tier teams that are just honestly, they're not even for fighting for relevance, or right, they're fighting for survival. And who those teams are have changed over the years a little bit. Currently right now with Uprising not able to play, they're sitting at 21st. I don't really know how this is going to shake down. I'm just going to go up from 20 as we work our way up. So Uprising's 21st. You had the Wild Dogs come in, which everyone completely shit on their chances of doing anything, and then they beat the Outlaws right away, and then put up a couple points against the Russians in Dynasty. They still didn't do very well, but I mean, they did, I thought, great for being, not getting any practices together, being from a bunch of different countries down in South America. And I thought that was a great look from some emerging talent that people gave a snowball's chance in hell of even doing as good as they did.
Yeah.
So,
and honestly, we jokingly watched it and we're like, dude, they're trying everything. And that's fine. They didn't just try like one game plan and just like, oh, it doesn't work, and then just kept doing it. Like they changed a bunch of stuff and kept playing, and it was good. It was a good look, I feel like.
Yeah. So the case I would like to make to you is that I think it's more down to about 11 or 12 on the numbers as far as overall rankings. If we're going to be talking about teams that are more consistent, just because if we go off of where things stood as of last year, before this year began. So, as it stood at the end of 2019, X Factor were the series champs. You had Russians. I'm going from first as we work our way down. Russian second, Heat, AC Dallas, Dynasty, Impact, Revo, and Damage. Those were the top 8 teams. And then after that, you had Uprising, which had taken a 4th place finish that year, but they were just and a 6th. They were just so inconsistent that that's what forced them into 9th. But they had some upsets along the way. And then the Ironmen were 10th, and they won the first event in 2020. Next after that, you have Thunder, and then Infamous, who reloaded with a bunch of stars. And then you have New York Extreme and DMG, Aftermath, Boom, PC Katana, Outlaws, ML Kings, and Elevation. So now if we head into this year with only 2 events, so it's a little bit different. We have some new names, but coming up from, so Uprising from the bottom, Uprising, Outlaws at 20th, Aftermath, Wild Dogs, who finished over Aftermath and the Outlaws, which is kind of cool. And then for them, and then DMG, Energy Elite, ML Kings, Columbus Level at 14th. This is where I kind of feel that we're heading into the territory where they deserve to be on a different tier, just because some of these teams have made Sundays here or there. They are definitely not consistent. So, like I said, I do agree with you in the sense that for the most part, for about 3 or 4 years, we do see those top 8 teams. But what I started to notice is that you did see a couple of these different flyers come in here or there. You'd see, the New York Extreme Boys came in. They've been on the edge. Thunder's been on the edge, constantly losing heartbreaking games, going 2-2 and crossing their fingers, sometimes making Sunday, most of the time not. Infamous is also another outlier, though, because that's a team that if you looked at, they didn't make Sunday. They had 2 frustrating events in 2020. But if you look at them on paper, I feel they probably could in another alternative universe have done a lot better. And then, Houston Heat ended up 10th overall this year with 2 9th place finishes. That's crazy. Right. AC Dallas sitting at 9th with a 7th and a 10th. Diesel at 8th place. I know this is with a fat asterisk on all this because we only had 2 events. But like I said, I did huge, fat, gigantic asterisk over here on all the stuff we're talking about. But that's why I kind of wanted to have this conversation with you, because I just think it's going to be super interesting heading into 2021, because we don't know. We've already seen, okay, so AC Dallas is kind of falling apart here, and we don't know who they're going to have out there. So are they going to be good enough to take 4th? Probably not. We'll, prove me wrong. We'll see. But it's going to be a fascinating story to watch, and I do have a ton of faith in Greg Pauly. I think he's an outstanding coach. Could Diesel take their place with as good as they played at World Cup? I think they got a chance, but we're going to have to see what happens with everyone, what happens with the pandemic, and it's just going to be kind of crazy as we move into 2021. But after kind of hearing that, what do you think about those mid-level teams? Again, I do agree that there is a solid core at the top that kind of go up and down a little bit depending on their performance. They're perennial Sunday, appearance people. We're always going to see them on Sundays. But I just think when you're kind of looking at where those, from 12th-ish to 8th, those 4 slots have been kind of taken over sometimes. Like even Damage had fallen down for a while into those spots to catapult back up. So it's been, to me, as a guy that, you know, loves the sport, and this is what I do, I mean, following that narrative that's happening between 12th and 8th has been really interesting, because there's a lot of struggle happening right there.
For sure. Yeah, and I think the uprising thing, for instance, for last year, right? I think they played 2 layouts extremely good. And those 2 finishes obviously put their position up, you know, much, much higher than their other finishes, right? And obviously that's why we have the season, right? That's why there's overall season points. I'm also a huge proponent that the season matters more than the cup win. People will fight me on this until the day I die, but I think a season win is more important than a cup win. You know, if winning cup allows you to win the season, then, you know, that's a double banger. That's even better. But I think if you win the season, but, you know, you win all 4 events and then get 2nd or 4th at cup, you still won. You know what I mean? But the overall season, obviously it's a accumulation of how well you did. And I think that 8th through 12th, like you're talking about, I think it comes down to, did we play one of the events really well? Did we like this layout really? You know, did it play to our strong suits really good? Or did you just beat somebody, you know, and that allowed you to win a match you shouldn't? So then you make Sunday and you get that top 10. I think for those 4 teams, a lot of times it comes down to those kind of factors. I think it's probably like the rude way of looking at it, but that's kind of the way that I see it and value it, because, you know, yes, Damage didn't do really good in 2019, but as a team, you know, they're still going to be competitive because of who's on the team, right? Like Heat being 10th on there. Do we account for Heat being a 10th place team? Everyone's like, no, like obviously not, right? The same with AC Dallas being a 9th place team in 2020. Like, no, we're technically not a 9th place team. We were in 2020, but the same team. And then like Diesel played really well this year, obviously, so they get the top 8 spot. And I think it kind of comes down to a little bit more or less, I guess you could say, is like, if you have an event where you do really well, do those mid-tier teams stay in that kind of, you know, 8 to 12 marker?
Yeah, I do. Let's just take Houston Heat as our entry point here, just for at least this part of the conversation, is that if you look at Houston Heat and their performance for the past 2 seasons, excluding 2020, excluding the 9th and the 9th, incredibly consistent, which is funny because of having to talk to those guys for years about how they look at the sport and their performances. And Ryan Moorhead will say this till the cows come home. He's like, look, I don't care if we take a 9th place. And I'd said this years past in the teams that I was on, is that to me, it's winning tournaments is important. You know, we can sit here and we can be super consistent and, you know, make all these Sundays but winning tournaments that's the exclamation point on your career. That's what is going to make it memorable for yourself and be a triumphant moment. And if you don't have that, it's going to be, even if you don't get one eventually, it's going to be kind of tough to deal with when this is all over. And they know that and they play for that. And that's why they've won so many tournaments. But they've also been incredibly consistent until 2020. So if we just go from the start of 2018 and then all of 2019, first place overall, winning the World Cup both years, by the way, 18 and 19, but a 5th, a 1st, a 5th, 3rd, 1st in 18, and then into 19, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 3rd, 1st. That's nasty, dude. So what I'm wondering is that, you know, was it just 2020? What is it about? Like, do they need to maybe bring some in? Because they had, other than losing Sergey, they hadn't really made any moves. And I remember, you know, sitting down with Sarge, with Randy Smith and the owner of the team. And he's like, well, what would you do, Matty? Like, I could pick up any of these guys, but I just won the World Cup 2 years in a row. Do you really think I need to make a change? And I was like, apparently not. Apparently you don't, because if you go back and you look at it, but again, nothing lasts forever. So you can't necessarily, you know, it's kind of one of those things. It's like when you have an offensive role going, when you're playing and everything's working and your game plan is just flawless, right? And everything's executing. And you're like, oh, well, we're going to run this game plan until they stop it. But you can't run that game plan forever. You know, you're not going to do, that's just not. So I'm just wondering now with the 2 9th places, and this is why I want your thoughts on it, because to me, I think it's one of the big stories of 2020, but it's only 2 events again. So with the asterisk,
right.
but it's part of the conversation. I mean, it's just weird because they hadn't had anywhere near that for 2 whole years. And then now all of a sudden 2 nights in a row for Heat. What do you think?
I honestly think the first event of every year is always kind of weird. Some people practice more than others, depending on location. They can or can't practice, if they're in the north with snow and weather, so on and so forth. So first events are always kind of weird, kind of funky. Ironman won that event. They played extremely good. We played them on Thursday, and we were like, man, I don't know if we're bouncing them or if we're just not shooting them. But if they played like that, they're going to do really good. And then obviously they ended up going and winning the tournament. So the first event, I'm not saying like it's like a wash or something like that, but like the first event is kind of funky. You kind of have to get back in the rhythm of everything. But then of course, 2020 after the first event, I'll be honest, like I'd say 99% of the AC Dallas program was just not planning on Cup. None of us thought Cup was going to happen because all the rumors that we heard, we just kind of counted it off, occasionally playing here and there, just kind of shooting your gun, but not at all like a normal season. As far as I think we counted it up one year, we had like 39 of the 52 weekends were accounted for on either playing or some type of tournament or something like that. 2020, I had the most weekends free I've ever had ever. And that's like extremely unusual. And then you have to change gears and go into Cup. And I think a lot of teams, and like, I think for us and for like specifically, I think we found out that Cup was going to happen, I think 5 or 6 weeks before Cup. So it wasn't like, we had all this time to kind of get back in the rhythm of it. It was like, well, we practiced for 3 weekends and then like, let's go kind of deal. And I think, I'm assuming, but I think that happened to a lot of teams, and that changes a little bit of as far as the dynamic for it. A lot of us that have been playing for a long time, Heat, for example, they've guys been playing for literally ever. It's like riding a bike. Yeah. They're going to be able to put down their gun and pick it back up and do just fine, but you're still going to miss shots that you normally wouldn't miss if you had a normal season. The beginning of 2019, you're going to be crisp, but the end of 2019, after practicing at the end of the year, you're not going to miss a shot. Like there is a drastic different level of playing well at the beginning of a year to the end of the year. And I think that's a big role that was a big reason that 2020 was so kind of funky. And I think it was across the board for a little bit of everyone. But I don't know. It's kind of tough to really say, like Dynasty hadn't won an event in how many years, but then they won Cup, right? Like, is there an asterisk on them winning Cup because it was 2020? Like, it's hard to say yes, but I think they played really well. X Factor was second, and X Factor's been doing really well. So it's like the good teams generally do good. But it's kind of a weird year and a hard thing to say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, leave it up to Dynasty though, to win the World Cup in 2020 on their 20th anniversary year.
20th year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just so fitting. Yeah, that's just. I mean, I'm of course a sucker for a good story. The last time they had won a tournament was Vegas of 17, and then I think it was 15 when they won the World Cup before, and they did that. And there was I think it was called 15, and Oliver came back for it. So like Dynasty just is always tailor made for some just instant classic dramatics to put them into the storybooks. But that's why people will always remember Dynasty's name, because it's easy to tell the San Diego Dynasty story. They just always paint the picture so perfectly when they need to. But yeah, I think that's going to always be a question. It's like the Dodgers winning the World Series, it's with a shortened season. I mean, I feel like everything this year is going to have an asterisk on it. I feel like that's inevitable, but Dynasty also was missing 2 of their core guys. But everyone else was too. It was a crazy year. I mean, when I went through all the changes and I had all my notes and was like downloading it to our people, I'm like, okay, let's start at the top. And then you just 40 minutes later, and that's it. Everyone remember that? It's just like, it was just every team was just, there was just tons of changes here and there and injuries and people fighting with injuries. And anyway, it was a very, very crazy season. And that's why I'm just wondering, as we go into 2021, what things are going to shape up. I only got you for maybe 4 more minutes here, Matt, but let's just talk about like where the top 4 kind of stand right now. The top 4 heading into next year, but then also the top 4 heading out of last year, which I think it's kind of part of the conversation here, because like we said, are people going to be able to get it back together? I think it's going to be slightly through the COVID 2020 filter as to what these rosters look like. Obviously some changes here. I'm wondering if, is this it for Impact? Are they going to go after any other guys? I mean, they got a really solid roster. Are there Canadians going to be able to come back for the first event? Is the vaccine going to work? There's still so many questions up in the air here, but as it stands right now, it's overall rankings for the two events that we had. It's Dynasty, Impact, Legion, Ironman, X Factor. That's the top 5, and then Damage, Revo, Diesel, Dallas, Heat to round out the top 10. Anything standing out there for you, or just again, we don't have a lot of time left, but I mean, what does anything standing out there for you?
Obviously, like the Ironman win on Vegas, it jumps them up a little bit. And they struggled a lot early on at Cup, but then they drastically turned it around and played much better. Obviously, beating us and then beating us again on Sunday. But I think that them being a little bit higher is kind of the oddball in a sense. Rebel was always kind of like my 8, 9, 10 team. They always they make Sunday really consistently, but it's very rare that they win that first one and then make that top 4. And I think they've done it. I think they've made top 4 twice. But for the other 8 teams, go ahead.
Just real quick, you're gonna love this because it fits your narrative for sure. So Revo after 2018 was ranked 7th. Revo after 2019 was ranked 7th. They're currently ranked 7th, finishing 7th place at World Cup with the 4th at the first event.
Right.
But
right.
Sorry. So yeah, you right. Continue.
Yeah. So that's ultimately what it is, right? That's the way I look at it and the way that I feel it. So say you take Ironman and Revo kind of out of that top 10, and you make them 9 and 10, right? So then the big thing now obviously is like no AC Dallas. There's technically the open spot for a 10th team. Because and that's nothing to take away from Greg, but I think a new team is going to struggle trying to come into pro and be top 10. I think that's just a fact, and I think if they do make top 10, that's going to be awesome on them. Absolutely, congratulations, badass. But it's tough. Obviously, like we're watching a lot of teams have that same struggle and not be able to do it consistently. So right now, you have Diesel should be a top 10 team, Ironman should be a top 10. And then Revo should be a top 10. I think you'll add Infamous to it, and then you have everything. Every other team that you just named is going to be the same, and they're going to be battling for that top 6, top 7, and then you have Diesel, Infamous, Revo, and Ironman kind of in that that 7, 8, 9, 10 slots. I think that's kind of how it's going to play out.
So last question before I let you go, because I can't remember. Quote me. Mark it down. Hey, it's recorded, man, forever. People, as long as the world still exists in the future, people will be able to come back and see what you said about it. It's both scary and awesome at the same time. So just before I let you go, you were the very first Ultimate Shootout winner. Do you know at all? I can't remember if you were there or because obviously we can't disclose what happens in an upcoming shootout. But do you know what happens in this one coming up? I was going to ask if you. No. So it's Chad Boucher playing Harrison in the semifinals. Who do you got in that one?
I think
Harrison 5, Chad Boucher. Who do you think? Okay.
Yeah, I think Harrison versus
Chad Boucher got Harrison.
Yeah, and then they play Berkeley, right?
Yeah.
I think Harrison's a good shot. I think he's an overall he's a pretty good player as fundamentally and all around. I think sometimes he struggles is experience-wise in the 5-on-5 games. Chad is the same thing. Chad's been playing for a long time. Chad's a good player too. I think probably Harrison fundamentally, snap shooting kind of stuff like that might kind of outdo Chad a little bit. That's the reason I think I'm going to take him. And the Ultimate Shootout's kind of a run around, good snap shoot kind of thing. And I think that's kind of what Harrison would excel at. Chad obviously is, attack the center kind of guy and go in and do run throughs kind of deal. You don't get to see him be an anchor, snap shooting and stuff like that. So, maybe I'm completely off base, but that's just kind of the way that I look at it. And then I think the Berkeley game, Berkeley's a good shot too. I think Harrison actually will probably get Berkeley, honestly.
Well, I mean, could be one of your competitors here as you're going to be in the finale playing for that money. So that's why I kind of wanted to at least ask you, because I don't know, like you said, this is getting recorded. We can always come back and reference this. And when the finale gets pulled out of the hat to see who's going to play who, I don't know, who knows? Maybe this will be a clip that we run. If you had to go up against Harrison or Fred, though, who would you rather play in the finale? If we did pull out of the hat and it was like, oh, Harrison or Fred, just going off your picks here, or Chad even, who do you, of those three, who would you like want to play the least?
Oh, play the least? I'd probably want to play Chad the least because he has the biggest mouth. Fred and I had some beef out of practice, so it'd probably be good to play him on one-on-one as far as like who I'd want to play.
All right, so Chad just because he talks tons of shit, Fred because you guys have had some issues in the past. I mean, Harrison's kind of feel like he tries to have issues with people, but he's a pretty happy-go-lucky dude. So if Harrison got really angry at me and wanted to fight me, I'd be like, "Are you being serious right now or not?" Because I can't. You're normally super chill. I don't know. I can just give yourself 10 minutes. I think you're gonna be fine after that. Because he's always pretty even keel. Even though he tries, I feel like he tries to hype himself up to get into that headspace to let the demon out. Anyway, Matt, thank you so much for sitting down with me. Best of luck with your new squad, Edmonton Impact. We're probably going to have to touch base again soon before the start of the season. If maybe some more news breaks or something, kind of get your thoughts on things, maybe when the layout hits. But yeah, man, you've had a hell of a career. Again, you've already won a Golden Barrel. You've won an Ultimate Shootout, the very first one that we had. You've played for, helped AC Dallas become the name that they were. And now you're moving to one of the best teams ever to walk the earth in Edmonton Impact. And they could have a run again, especially with the roster that they have. It's going to be a very fascinating story. So any last words, anybody you want to thank before we sign off?
I kind of said it earlier, obviously the AC program with Greg for the opportunity. Obviously, I wouldn't have the chance to play on Impact without that. So that's obviously something that I feel like needs to be said. Obviously, Empire and all our sponsors over the years made some good relationships. And, that's not changing, luckily, with being on Impact. There's still GI and Empire. But ultimately, the organization opportunity with AC, I wouldn't be able to have the opportunity and be able to have the conversation and do the things if it wasn't for that. So that's huge. And then obviously, I've said this, like quoted before, I can't do what I do without having my teammates. So always, Ryan, BJ, John, TJ, and even Logan this past year. And then, over the years, all the guys that I've played with, that allows me to do what I do and shoot people and play. So always a thanks to all those guys. And thank you guys and Go Sports and you, Matty, for doing it. So I appreciate it. Makes me feel like a superstar when I'm just a dude shooting paintballs.
Hey, dude, I always say it's a very simple equation. If you're out there slaughtering everybody, I'm forced to talk about how amazing you are. And so, Matt, as it stands the past couple of years, I'm forced to talk about how amazing you are. So, yes, you've had an amazing career so far. Can't wait to see what happens. Merry Christmas, everyone. We are going to be having some shows coming at you here as we work through this off season. And midway through January, we're going to have another one of those pro exhibitions. We're going to be filming a new Ultimate Shootout as well, too. So, good things on the horizon. So stick with us here and hope everyone's staying safe and sane. See you guys next time.